Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5. What if the world has been lying to you from the very beginning? What if the very things that made you feel out of place, the deep questions, the vivid dreams, the way you saw through people and felt everything so intensely, were never a flaw, but proof that you were chosen one? This is not just another message. This is a divine awakening. You're not here by accident. God orchestrated your steps to bring you to this exact moment, because it's time. Time to uncover what they tried to keep hidden. Time to remember who you truly are. Have you ever felt like something's been missing? Like there are pieces of your story that don't quite add up? You've sensed it since childhood, haven't you? That unshakable feeling that you were meant for something more, that the world around you didn't fully understand who you are, and maybe neither did you. But heaven did. If this message resonates with you, comment 999 below as a prophetic act, a declaration that you're ready to reclaim your true identity. Because once this truth is revealed, your life will never be the same again. Chosen one. Let's go back to the beginning. Before you had words to describe your feelings, before you even understood the concept of purpose, something inside you knew. It knew you were different. It knew the world around you wasn't telling the whole story. And deep down, it knew there was more to your existence than anyone dared to say out loud. The truth is, you've always been marked, chosen, before the foundation of the world. As Ephesians chapter 1 verse the 4th of December lares, "For he chose us in Christ before the foundation of the world." That means your life was never random. You were set apart by design. But here's what no one told you. From the moment you arrived, forces began working to hide that truth. Not just people, but spiritual systems, generational wounds, and invisible enemies that saw your light before you did. They recognized the threat you would become the moment you awakened. And so, they worked in silence. Not to destroy you outright, but to dim your awareness, blur your memories, and convince you that your power was imaginary. They planted seeds of doubt where faith was supposed to grow. They placed you in environments where your brilliance was misunderstood, even punished. They told you to tone it down, to stop asking so many questions, to be more like everyone else. Not because you were wrong, but because they feared what would happen if you ever embraced the truth. But let's be clear about one thing. Your difference was divine. Have you ever felt like you were out of place, even in the places you were supposed to belong? Like your thoughts ran deeper than the room could handle? Like the way you noticed things, facial expressions, energy shifts, unspoken emotions made you feel like an outsider in your own family, school, or church? Chosen one, that wasn't you being broken. That was the world reacting to your anointing. From an early age, you saw too much, felt too much, knew too much. While others chased distraction, you were listening, watching, discerning. And although you may not have had the language for it, your spirit recognized that something inside you was being awakened, and something outside you was trying to stop it. You weren't the problem. You were the revelation they didn't want to face. Let's talk about those early markers, the ones you now realize were spiritual clues. Maybe there were moments where you felt like you could hear what wasn't being said, where a room full of smiles still felt heavy. Or you found yourself asking questions no one could answer. Why am I here? Why does suffering exist? Why do I see what others don't? And what did they tell you? You're too sensitive. You're thinking too much. You're just a child. But you weren't just a child. You were a called child. And like Samuel in 1 Samuel chapter 3, when he heard the voice of God calling his name in the night, you were already being summoned, even if no one around you had the wisdom to help you understand it. And that ignorance, that lack of support, it wasn't innocent. The enemy's strategy has always been to disrupt the chosen in childhood, to confuse them before they mature, to attack their confidence before it stabilizes. to get them to bury their gifts before they can bear fruit. Because once a chosen one realizes who they are, the kingdom of darkness trembles. Look back. Reflect for a moment. How many times were you told to be less than what you are? How many gifts did you silence to avoid being misunderstood? How many truths did you hide just to survive in places that couldn't hold your light? Chosen one, this wasn't just your story. This was the enemy's assignment to erase your identity before it could be revealed. And yet, here you are. Despite the suppression, the rejection, the loneliness, and the confusion, something inside you kept reaching. Something inside you refused to let go of the truth, even when it didn't make sense. And that something wasn't human strength, it was divine protection. Because your calling could never be destroyed. It could only be delayed. Let me remind you of Joseph the dreamer in Genesis chapter 37. He saw visions of his future, of divine rulership and breakthrough. But when he shared them, even his own brothers hated him for it. They threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and tried to strip him of everything that made him chosen. But what they didn't realize was that every betrayal was part of his elevation. The same is true for you. They tried to bury you, but they didn't know you were a seed. Every heartbreak planted something. Every rejection refined something. Every silence taught you how to hear God's voice more clearly. Every abandonment forced you to discover the presence that never leaves the Holy Spirit. And just like Joseph, you've been moving through a divine process, from the pit to the palace, from hidden to revealed. But the process doesn't change the identity. You've always been chosen. It's not just biblical. Even history confirms it. Einstein was labeled slow. Tesla was called madman. Princess Diana was misunderstood. Gandhi was resisted. Harriet Tubman was hunted. Jesus was crucified. And yet they carried heaven in their lungs. So do you. Chosen one, your pain was real. The suppression was intentional. The isolation was strategic. But none of it succeeded in doing the one thing they hoped it would make you forget who you are. You remembered. You're remembering now. And when a chosen one remembers, everything shifts. You weren't made to fit in. You were born to interrupt patterns, to challenge darkness, to carry God's presence, and to awaken the generations. So ask yourself, was all of this really just coincidence? Or is this the moment you finally see the conspiracy for what it was, not a curse, but confirmation? Chosen one, they feared your awakening. They feared your vision. They feared the day you'd hear this message and recognize yourself in it. And now that you have, it's time to reclaim everything they tried to erase. Chosen one, now that you understand the war against your identity, it's time to uncover what's been hidden within you all along. Because the truth is, while the world tried to distort your perception of self, heaven never stopped shaping your blueprint. There are things inside you that aren't ordinary. You've always known it, the way you feel, the way you sense things, the way you carry burdens that don't even belong to you. And for most of your life, you may have viewed these traits as weaknesses, but they are not weaknesses. They are evidence. Evidence that God has marked you. Let's begin with one of the clearest markers of the chosen: deep empathy. You've probably asked yourself this before. Why do I feel so much? Why does other people's pain affect me so deeply? Why do I see what others ignore? Chosen one, this is not random emotional intensity. This is divine discernment. Galatians chapter 6 verse 2 tells us, "Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ." That's what you've been doing since childhood. When others walked past the hurting, you stopped. When someone cried in silence, you noticed. When a friend was angry, you saw the sadness underneath. This is not something you learned. It was imprinted on your soul. You were born with a heart that beats in rhythm with the broken. Not because you were weak, but because you were chosen to reflect God's compassion In a world that's forgotten how to love. Even when it cost you, you gave. Even when you were overlooked, you served. Even when no one saw you, you kept showing up for others. And maybe, just maybe, you've wondered why. Why am I always the one holding space for everyone else? Why do I care so deeply when no one seems to care the same way for me? Here's why. Because you carry God's heart. He entrusted you with this sensitivity, not to break you, but to build others through you. And every time you've loved without condition, every time you've comforted someone in silence, every time you've stood in the gap when no one else would, heaven recorded it. And now, heaven is revealing it. People like you don't just appear by accident. Princess Diana was ridiculed for her emotional openness, but she changed the world with her compassion. Gandhi carried the pain of the oppressed so deeply that he laid down his own life's comforts for justice. Jesus, the ultimate example, moved with compassion every time he saw suffering, healing, feeding, restoring. And now you know why your heart works the way it does. It's not broken, it's consecrated. But empathy is only one piece of your spiritual blueprint. There's another layer, one that appears when the world is asleep in the stillness of night. Let's talk about your dreams. Chosen one, has it ever happened to you? You close your eyes, and the dream begins. Not just any dream, but the kind you wake up from with tears in your eyes, or a sense of urgency in your chest. Maybe the kind that haunts you for days, refusing to fade. You've had dreams that felt more real than life dreams that revealed things before they happened, or warned you of things you didn't yet understand. And maybe you told someone, and they brushed it off, called it imagination, nonsense. But those dreams weren't random. They were revelations. Matthew chapter 1, verses 20-21 tells us how an angel appeared to Joseph in a dream, revealing the truth about Mary's divine pregnancy. That dream changed everything, not just for Joseph, but for the course of history. God still speaks through dreams, and the chosen ones often receive the most vivid, the most mysterious, and the most significant of them all. You are not imagining it. Your dream life is a spiritual highway. God has been communicating with you this way for years, and the enemy knew that. That's why your dream life may have also been a battleground with nightmares, strange symbols, or confusion trying to cloud the message. But even that confirms something deeper. God has been giving you eyes to see beyond the veil. Think of Joseph in Genesis, the dreamer who saw visions of his brothers bowing before him. They hated him for it, mocked him, sold him. But what God showed him in a dream eventually manifested in reality. Think of Harriet Tubman, a woman born into slavery who trusted the prophetic visions she received in her sleep. Those dreams revealed safe routes, danger ahead, and when to move. Her obedience saved hundreds. And now, think of your own dreams. What have they been trying to tell you? That you're being prepared, that you're being trained, that there's something coming, and you're part of it. Dreams are divine downloads, not just stories, not just visions, but assignments. So write them down, pray over them, ask for interpretation, because your dreams might just be the next chapter of your calling. But there's still more to your blueprint. There's a third sign, one that doesn't appear in words or feelings, one that happens in moments when you should have been destroyed, but you weren't. Divine protection. Chosen one, let's be honest. You've faced things that should have taken you out. The heartbreak that should have broken you. The betrayal that should have left you bitter. The financial blow that should have wiped you out. The spiritual attacks, the anxiety, the depression. And yet, you survived. Why? Because you were preserved. Psalm chapter 34 verse 7 says, "The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them." You've been surrounded even when you couldn't see it. You were delayed and didn't realize God was protecting you from danger. You were rerouted and didn't realize he was shifting you out of harm's way. Some of your greatest frustrations were actually divine interventions. Some of your biggest no's were actually heavenly redirections. Think of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1958. A woman stabbed him in the chest. Doctors told him that if he had even sneezed, the blade would have pierced his aorta and killed him instantly. But he survived and went on to lead one of the most powerful movements in human history. That's what protection looks like. Think of Daniel in the lion's den untouched. Think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego unburned. Think of Paul beaten, shipwrecked, imprisoned, but never stopped. And now think of yourself. All those moments you didn't understand, all those times you felt like your world was collapsing, all the situations you walked out of when others didn't, that was God. His hand was over you. His angels were surrounding you. Because your mission wasn't complete. Because your voice was still needed. Because your destiny could not be aborted. So now you see the full picture. Your empathy wasn't weakness, it was divine compassion. Your dreams weren't fiction, they were divine communication. Your survival wasn't luck, it was divine protection. You've been walking in a spiritual blueprint this whole time. And even though the world didn't recognize it, God did. Now it's your turn to recognize it too. You were designed differently because you were destined for something greater. Chosen one. By now you're beginning to see the pattern, the design beneath your life. The hidden signs, the divine blueprint, the constant protection, all of it was preparing you for this truth. You've never been alone. Even when the people around you didn't understand you, even when the world made you feel like your voice didn't matter, even when you felt abandoned, misunderstood, or overlooked, there was a presence that never left your side. That presence was God, and His connection to you was never broken, only buried beneath the noise of life. You didn't imagine those quiet moments where peace came out of nowhere. You didn't make up that comfort you felt when you had no words left to pray. Those weren't coincidences, they were divine confirmations. They were God's way of saying, I'm still here, I never left, and I never will. John chapter 15 verse 16 reminds us, You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit that will last. That's what this connection is about. It's not religious performance. It's not about perfect words. It's about divine relationship, a sacred link that was established long before you had language for it. Have you ever felt something whispering in your spirit when no one else was around? A knowing, a nudge, a warning, a sudden urge to pray when you didn't know why. A wave of peace that made no sense in the middle of chaos. Chosen one, these were not emotional fluctuations. They were invitations from heaven. Maybe you remember being young, walking outside, and feeling like the wind was talking to you, sitting in silence and feeling like someone unseen was near. Perhaps you were drawn to moments of stillness while others craved noise. Maybe your comfort came not from crowds, but from that quiet, sacred space inside yourself where you felt connected. Even as a child, you knew there was something greater. And while others may have dismissed your sensitivity, while even your own family may not have understood what was stirring inside you, God did. He was drawing you in even then. This is how many of God's chosen ones are awakened not through grand, flashy events, but through soft, divine touches, through quiet callings that echo louder than any voice in the world. Consider Samuel, the young prophet. In 1 Samuel chapter 3, verses 4-10, we're told how God called out to him in the night. He didn't know it was God at first. He thought it was a man. But once he recognized the voice and responded, his life was forever changed. Could it be that God has been calling your name too? That the moments you dismissed as strange, the stillness you couldn't explain, the recurring sense of being guided, was his voice, waiting for you to finally say, "Speak, Lord, I'm listening." Many people go through life unaware of the divine presence surrounding them, but not you. You felt it. You've known it. You've been touched by it. Even if you couldn't always explain it, you knew something holy was walking with you. There's a reason for that. God doesn't hide from His chosen ones. He draws near to them. He speaks to them. He whispers truth in their sleep and floods their hearts with peace when they should be breaking. You've likely had moments in your life where you should have lost hope but didn't, where everyone around you gave up but you kept holding on, where something inside you said, keep going, even when everything outside of you said, it's over. That's not self-help. That's not luck. That is the divine connection anchoring your spirit to something deeper than your circumstances. Think about Joan of Arc, the young French peasant girl who led an army because she believed she was hearing from God. She was mocked, accused, executed, but her faith never wavered because she knew His voice. Chosen one, you too have been receiving divine communication. And though the world may call you crazy, overly spiritual, or overly sensitive, heaven calls you appointed, this connection is not new, it's eternal. You were created with it. You were born carrying it. The enemy's goal has always been to distort it, distract you from it, and make you doubt it. But the truth remains. God's voice is still speaking to you. And it's not just through silence or dreams. It's also through what's moved your heart the most, the stories that stirred something in your soul, long before you understood why. Let's talk about that. While other children were lost in fairy tales and cartoons, you were drawn to something deeper. You weren't just entertained by stories of courage, faith, and sacrifice, you were activated by them. Maybe you remember watching films or hearing Bible stories that left you in tears not because they were sad, but because they felt familiar, as if some part of your spirit recognized them as pieces of your own story. This is another divine marker, being drawn to those who stood for something greater. Think of Daniel in the lion's den, Daniel chapter 6, of Esther, who risked her life to save her people, of Moses, who wrestled with insecurity yet still led a nation to freedom. You didn't just admire these figures, you related to them, because your spirit saw itself in their struggle, in their calling, in their willingness to walk alone, to carry something heavy, to obey even when afraid. Romans chapter 15 verse 4 tells us, everything that has been written before was written to teach us, so that with patience and encouragement from the Scriptures, we may have hope. God used these stories to shape you, to whisper truth into your heart before the world could silence it. While others forgot them the moment they left Sunday school, you carried them. They followed you, grew with you, and now they're awakening within you again. It's no coincidence, because those stories weren't just inspiration, they were instructions. They were proof that you weren't the only one walking this path, that God has always used the misunderstood, the sensitive, the rejected, and the bold to change the course of history. And now, He's using you. You're part of that lineage, the spiritual descendants of the courageous, the faithful, the sensitive warriors who carry both fire and compassion, both authority and empathy. The stories you were drawn to, the scriptures that stirred your heart, the quiet moments where you felt something sacred moving inside you, all of it was God's way of saying, I'm here, I'm with you, and I've always been speaking. So if you've ever questioned why you felt spiritually alive in moments others called silly or irrelevant, if you've ever found yourself crying during a scene of sacrifice or worship, wondering why your chest was heavy with something you couldn't explain, now you know. That was your spiritual memory waking up. That was your divine connection burning through the surface of the world. That was God reaching for you, and you reaching back, even without knowing it. Chosen one, you are not just spiritually aware. You are spiritually linked, connected to a purpose, a presence, and a plan that is unfolding now. The question is, will you answer the call fully? Because this connection is not just a gift, it's your anchor. And in the next phase, We'll explore why your hunger for truth, your need to understand, is another divine signal that you've been set apart for something extraordinary. Chosen one, now we reach one of the most powerful and often misunderstood signs that you were set apart. It's something you may have struggled with your entire life. You ask too many questions. You've probably heard it before. You think too much. Why can't you just let it go? Not everything needs to make sense. But to you, it did. Not because you were trying to rebel, not because you needed control, but because there was a fire inside you, a divine pull towards something deeper. You were never satisfied with surface answers. Shallow explanations made your spirit restless, and when others settled for what they were told, you searched for what wasn't being said. That wasn't rebellion. That was revelation trying to find a way in. Proverbs chapter 25, verse the 2nd of December layers. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. To search out a matter is the glory of kings. God hid things not to keep them from you, but to invite you into the sacred pursuit. And that's what you've been doing, maybe without realizing it. Chasing fragments of truth, wrestling with questions others were too afraid to ask, following a divine curiosity that set you apart from everyone around you. You weren't being difficult, you were being called. Let's go back to your childhood. Do you remember staring up at the stars, not just in wonder, but in longing? Do you remember lying awake at night, pondering the beginning of time? Did you ask questions like, why are we here? Or what happens after we die? Long before others even thought to consider them? You weren't looking for attention. You were searching for eternity. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11 says, "He has set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end." That hunger in youth, the unshakable desire to understand, was eternity echoing inside your chest. It was God pulling you toward the mysteries of the divine. And that's why you've never been content with easy answers, because your spirit was never designed to live in the shallow end. Even in school, maybe you asked questions that made the room go silent. In church, perhaps you wrestled with sermons that didn't feel complete. Among friends, you were the one who said, "But what if it means something more?" They didn't always know how to answer you, and that's okay, because you weren't looking for their answers. You were looking for His. Let's not forget, even Jesus was found at 12 years old in the temple, asking and answering questions that left religious scholars astonished. Luke chapter 2, verses 46-47. Even then, He wasn't just participating, He was searching, unfolding revelation, opening up spiritual doors through sacred questions. You've done the same. And every time you've pressed deeper, God responded. Maybe not instantly, maybe not with fireworks, but with layers of wisdom revealed over time. And you're not the only one who's walked this path. Solomon, when given the chance to ask God for anything, didn't ask for wealth or revenge. He asked for understanding. And because he valued wisdom, God gave him more than he could ever ask or imagine. 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 9-12. Daniel the prophet didn't just interpret dreams, he unraveled mysteries no one else could touch. He carried divine intelligence and insight that shook kingdoms. Daniel chapter 2, verses 19-23. Even in modern history, the pattern repeats. Leonardo da Vinci was fascinated by the hidden systems of the human body, and the universe's notebooks were filled with spiritual questions masked as scientific diagrams. Isaac Newton, considered one of the greatest minds in science, spent just as much time studying the Bible as he did gravity, believing that the laws of nature revealed God's divine order. Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, wrestled with the nature of faith and existence through questions others were afraid to touch. He said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." What do all these people have in common? They were driven by questions, not crippled by them. And so are you. Chosen one, the world may have taught you that too much thinking is dangerous, that questions threaten faith, that not having all the answers makes you unstable. But in truth, it's the opposite. Your desire to seek is a reflection of your divine design. You were meant to dig, to wonder, to uncover. You are meant to search for what's hidden, because the kingdom of God has always belonged to those who seek. Proverbs chapter 2, verses 3, the 5th of December layers. If you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. And that's what you've been doing your whole life. Even when it made us uncomfortable, even when it left you isolated, even when you felt like no one else saw what you were trying to see, that isolation wasn't punishment. It was preparation, because revelation requires solitude, and those who carry deep wisdom must be trained in silence before they speak in power. Chosen one, what you've been drawn to has always been holy. Have you noticed how certain truths feel familiar even when you hear them for the first time? How some revelations don't just interest you, they stir something ancient inside you. That's not random. That's the Holy Spirit awakening your remembrance. Because you don't just learn truth, you recognize it. And now, the questions you once saw as distractions are becoming keys. Keys to unlock purpose. Keys to dismantle deception. Keys to illuminate others who are still walking in darkness. Because here's the next truth you need to hear. The wisdom God gives you isn't just for you. It's meant to be shared. That's why you feel such an urgency to speak when something resonates deeply. Why you can't stay silent when you see others being misled. Why your heart burns when truth is distorted or hidden. It's because your questions have produced spiritual sight, and now God is giving you permission to use that sight to guide others. But with that comes resistance. Just as Jesus spoke in parables to reveal truth only to those with ears to hear, just as Paul was rejected, misunderstood, and attacked for his revelation, just as Moses doubted his voice but still carried divine instruction, so will you be resisted. Not everyone will understand your questions. Not everyone will welcome your truth. Some will mock it, some will fear it, some will try to silence it. But chosen one, truth does not ask for permission. It does not wait for validation. It simply is, and you were chosen to carry it. So now ask yourself, what if the very questions that made you feel like a misfit were the exact reason God chose you? What if the restlessness in your spirit was never meant to be fixed, but followed? What if everything you've sought is now seeking you? This is the moment where the journey shifts. You are no longer just the seeker. You are the one who carries what others are searching for. And as we move into what comes next, prepare your heart, because what was once hidden, your story, your wisdom, your divine role, is about to be revealed in full. Chosen one, now that the truth has been revealed, you can never see yourself the same again. Everything, the pain, the isolation, the dreams, the questions, it all pointed to one thing. You were never ordinary. You were hidden, not forgotten. Silenced, not erased. Misunderstood, not mistaken. You were chosen. What they tried to bury, God is now bringing into the light. The identity they tried to suppress is rising with power. And the story they hoped you'd never remember is now unfolding by divine design. This is your moment. If this message awakens something deep in your soul, comment 999 below as your declaration. I remember who I am. And if you feel led to support this mission, consider sowing a seed through a super thanks. It helps us keep spreading these truths to the ones still searching. Don't stop here. Keep pressing in. Keep seeking. Keep walking boldly. Because your journey isn't ending, it's just beginning. You are seen. You are loved. And heaven is backing you.